You want to know what 13 years of keeping planes in the air looks like? It doesn't look like those perfect flight attendants with their plastic smiles on the company website. It doesn't look like the shiny jets sitting pretty on the Denver tarmac waiting for their Instagram moment. No, it looks like me at 4 a.m., staring at a wall of monitors in a windowless bunker in Colorado Springs that smells like burnt coffee, anxiety, and the metallic taste of a breakdown waiting to happen. It looks like Michael Rodriguez. That's me, 49 years old, nursing my third cup of black coffee that tastes like it was brewed in an ashtray, praying the de-icing crews in Salt Lake actually show up before the FAA decides to shut us down for the day. For 13 years, I've been the operations director at Skylink Airways. That's a fancy title for professional miracle worker. My job is simple. Take the logistical nightmare of flying metal tubes full of passengers across the Rocky Mountains and make sure they don't crash into each other or get stuck circling Denver until they run out of fuel and hope. I am the invisible hand. I'm the reason your luggage actually makes it to Seattle, even if your soul dies somewhere over the Continental Divide. I'm the guy who makes sure 180 people don't become a news story because some hotshot pilot thought he could beat a thunderstorm to the gate. The system we use is called Flight Core. Sounds futuristic, right? Like something Elon Musk would tweet about while high on his own ego. In reality, Flight Core is a patchwork monster of code written in the late 90s by some guy named Gary who probably died of a stroke at his keyboard. It's held together by digital duct tape, prayers, and a series of custom scripts that I, and only I, know how to run. It's temperamental as hell. You treat it right, feed it the right data codes, and it purrs like a well-tuned V8. You look at it sideways, or God forbid you try to optimize it without asking permission, and it'll ground an entire fleet faster than a pilot failing a breathalyzer test. I learned to handle systems like this back in the Air Force. Spent 8 years working on avionics systems that were just as cranky and twice as deadly if you screwed them up. The military taught me discipline, attention to detail, and that when something works, you don't fix it just because some college boy with an MBA thinks he knows better. After my divorce brought me back to civilian life, I needed steady work that could pay for my son's tuition at Colorado State. Kid studying aerospace engineering makes his old man proud, even if the divorce settlement makes me eat ramen 3 nights a week. This particular Tuesday started like every other Tuesday for the past decade. I walked into the operations center at 3:45 a.m., the hum of servers vibrating through the concrete floor like a mechanical heartbeat. The place has that industrial carpet that was probably gray once, but is now the color of despair and spilled coffee. I sat down at my command station, a Herman Miller chair I borrowed from HR 3 years ago when they got their fancy new furniture. "Morning, Mac," grunted Kevin, my shift supervisor. Kevin looks like a thumb with a mustache and has the social skills to match. He was eating a breakfast burrito that could qualify as a biological weapon under the Geneva Convention. "Copy that, Kevin," I said, logging into Flight Core. The screen flickered green, my reflection staring back from the monitor. Bags under my eyes, graying hair, the look of a man who's seen too many emergency landings and not enough sleep. But steady hands on the keyboard, muscle memory from years of keeping chaos at bay. "How's the Western Corridor looking this morning?" "Mountain weather's acting like a spoiled teenager," Kevin mumbled through his burrito. "Salt Lake's reporting wind shear warnings, and we've got a sensor glitch on the fuel optimization protocol. Systems throwing error codes like confetti." "Roger that. I'll bypass the handshake sequence and get the crews on standby." My fingers moved across the keyboard like I was playing piano. 10 minutes later, I'd rerouted 2 flights around the weather system, manually patched the sensor lag before it could cascade into a fleet-wide panic, and prevented what could have been a $200,000 delay nightmare. The warning lights blinked off one by one. Green across the board. The most beautiful sight in aviation. You see, people think planes fly on jet fuel. They don't. They fly on the sheer stubborn determination of guys like me who refuse to let Murphy's Law win. The universe wants chaos. Weather delays, mechanical failures, crew scheduling disasters that would make a soap opera writer weep. I'm the wall against that chaos. I'm the guy who makes order out of entropy, who turns the impossible into the routine. That's when everything went to hell. At exactly 9:15 a.m., the door to the operations center swung open like the gates of corporate purgatory. Usually, nobody comes down here unless something's on fire or someone's getting fired. The air pressure in the room actually changed, and not in a good way. The smell of burnt coffee was instantly replaced by an aggressive cloud of expensive cologne and entitlement that made my sinuses burn. Standing there looking like they'd just stepped off a private jet from some wellness retreat were Christopher Thompson and Ashley Walsh. Christopher is the owner's son, 32 years old, jawline like a superhero, business sense of a ham sandwich left in the sun too long. He'd spent the last 3 years on some spiritual journey in Dubai, which I'm pretty sure is code for burning through daddy's money while pretending to find himself. Now he was back, wearing a suit that cost more than my truck, sporting the meaningless title of Strategic Operations Officer, and clinging to his arm like a designer barnacle was Ashley. Ashley was trouble from day one. Former startup consultant, failed logistics company, but she had the confidence of someone who'd never actually fixed anything when it broke. She was carrying a tablet like it contained the secret to eternal life, and her eyes had that dead inside look you see in people who've spent too much time believing their own marketing copy. "Michael," Christopher boomed, flashing a smile that was all veneers and no warmth. "Just the man we wanted to see." My stomach dropped. Same feeling you get when you hear that weird grinding noise in your transmission 500 miles from the nearest mechanic. This wasn't a social call. "Christopher," I said, not bothering to stand up, "what brings you down to the bunker? Coffee machine's broken if that's what you're looking for." "Oh no, we're not here for coffee," Ashley chimed in, her voice high and airy like she was talking to a golden retriever. "We're here to observe. Your father thinks it's time we really understood the operational core. Streamline workflows." Streamline, I hate that word more than root canals and tax audits combined. In corporate speak, streamline means fire the people who know what they're doing and replace them with an app that doesn't work and costs twice as much. Right now, I'm streamlining a 737 around a thunderstorm over the Rockies so 180 people don't become tomorrow's headline, I said flatly. "So observe away. Just don't touch anything that might accidentally kill someone." Christopher laughed, a dry, hollow sound like wind through an empty skull. "Always straight to the point, Mac. Dad loves that about you, that old-school approach. But we're thinking maybe we can modernize that approach, make it scalable, He walked toward my bank of monitors, reaching out a manicured hand toward the screen displaying Flight Corps' raw routing data. That screen was showing live aircraft positions, fuel calculations, and weather overlays that controlled the fate of every plane in our network. "Don't," I said, sharp enough to cut glass. He froze, hand hovering inches from the screen. "Relax, Mac. It's just data." "It's not data, Christopher. It's a live artery pumping blood through this operation. You touch that screen, you might accidentally cancel a fuel order in Vegas. You want to explain to a plane full of angry passengers why they're sitting on the tarmac smelling the lavatory for 4 hours while we figure out what you broke?" He pulled his hand back, but his jaw tightened. For a second, the chill Dubai guru mask slipped, and I saw the petulant prince who'd never been told no in his privileged little life. The kind of guy who thinks expertise is something you can download from YouTube. "We have a meeting at 2:30, Christopher said, his voice dropping an octave into CEO in training mode. "Conference room. Be there. We need to discuss operational efficiency metrics. I'm busy keeping planes in the air, Christopher. It's kind of my thing. It wasn't a request, Mac." They turned and left, trailing their cloud of expensive perfume and bad ideas. The door clicked shut with the finality of a coffin lid. The silence that followed was heavy, loaded with the kind of tension that makes your teeth itch. Kevin looked at me over his toxic waste burrito. That felt ominous as hell. "Yeah," I said, turning back to my screens where real work was happening. "Better dust off your resume, Kevin. The barbarians are inside the gates." I didn't know it then, but Kevin and I had just witnessed the beginning of the end. That cloud of cologne and entitlement was about to become a hurricane of incompetence that would tear through Skylink Airways like a tornado through a trailer park. For the next 2 weeks, the corporate makeover began in earnest. It was like watching a perfectly good engine get torn apart by people who thought they could improve it with a smartphone app. They fired Steven, the maintenance scheduler, first. Steven had a bad knee and worse attitude, but he could juggle parts inventory in his head like some kind of savant. 30 years of experience walking out the door with a cardboard box and a middle finger. They replaced him with a scheduling algorithm that immediately ordered 300 toilet assemblies and 0 brake pads. When I pointed out that planes need brakes more than extra toilets, Ashley told me I was being negative about innovation. They cut the night shift at customer service because nobody calls at 3 a.m., Christopher announced with the confidence of someone who'd never worked a day in his life. Except for the cargo pilots who represent 40% of our revenue and fly nothing but red-eye routes. But apparently that was just a minor detail nobody thought to mention to the strategic operations officer. I watched it all happen like a slow-motion car crash. I sent emails highlighting the risks in bright yellow marker. I printed reports showing why their optimizations would cost us millions. The response from Christopher was always the same corporate non-answer. Thanks for the feedback, Mac. Let's stay positive and trust the process. Always with that passive-aggressive smiley face emoji that felt like a digital slap across the face. Ashley started shadowing me, which meant she sat in my office scrolling through TikTok while occasionally looking up to ask questions that made me want to update my resume and flee to a different industry entirely. Why are there so many codes? Can't we just color code the flights? Green for on time, red for delayed? Because Ashley, I said through gritted teeth while entering a manual weather override that was keeping 200 people from being stranded in Phoenix. The codes tell us why it's delayed. Mechanical, crew, weather, act of God. A red color doesn't tell me if I need a mechanic or a priest. You're really negative, Mac, she sighed, blowing a bubble with her gum. You need to work on your energy. It's affecting team morale. Team morale. The team was terrified. Everyone was walking on eggshells, afraid to breathe wrong in case they became the next casualty in Christopher's efficiency crusade. The break room went from a place where we'd trade war stories about impossible flights and crazy passengers to silent as a morgue. People ate their sandwiches while staring at their phones, nobody wanting to make eye contact in case it made them look like they weren't aligned with the vision. I knew they were coming for me next. Could feel it in my bones like bad weather rolling in over the mountains. They couldn't fire me yet because I held the keys to Flight Core, all the custom scripts and workarounds that kept this whole operation from turning into a smoking crater. But they thought they could learn it all, thought it was just data on screens that any college grad could figure out. That's when I made a decision that would either save my sanity or land me in federal prison. If these people wanted to drive the plane, I was going to let them. But first, I was going to quietly remove the steering wheel and see how far they got. You see, over the years, I'd written about 2,400 lines of custom code to keep Flight Core from completely losing its mind. These weren't official updates. I didn't even know about half of them. They were patches, workarounds, digital band-aids I'd created to handle everything from mountain weather routing to high-altitude fuel calculations that the original programmers never thought about. For example, every Thursday like clockwork, the crew scheduling system has what I call its weekly nervous breakdown. Without my script automatically pulling backup data from payroll, the system just displays error 404, crew not found, and every plane sits there like expensive lawn ornaments until someone manually calls 200 pilots to figure out who's supposed to be flying what. I didn't delete the scripts. That would be sabotage, and I'm not a criminal. I'm a professional with a pension to protect. Instead, I spent 3 days doing some creative file organization. I moved all my custom operational protocols into a single encrypted user directory on the local server. My user directory, the one that was tied to my active employee credentials. The logic was rock solid. These were my personal productivity tools, right? Security protocol says that when someone leaves the company, their access gets revoked to protect sensitive systems. If I'm employed, the scripts run. If I'm not employed, well, access denied for security reasons. Can't have former employees poking around in company systems. Ashley noticed me working late one evening, typing away while she was getting ready to leave for whatever influencers do after 5 p.m. Love the dedication, Mac, she chirped, shouldering her designer bag. Really embracing the hustle mentality. Just documenting everything for the transition, I said, which wasn't exactly a lie. I was documenting where everything would be when they realized they needed it. Perfect. We're bringing in consultants from McKinsey next week to map the operational workflow. They're going to love what they find. Oh, they're going to find plenty, I muttered under my breath. What was that? I said they're going to be busy. By Friday afternoon, the trap was set. My scripts were now the load-bearing wall holding up the entire operation, and the detonator was my employment status. One phone call to HR, and the whole house of cards would come tumbling down. Friday at 2:25 p.m., the summons came. Outlook notification popping up on my screen like a death warrant. Meeting, HR and strategy, 2:30 p.m. No subject line, no agenda, but I knew exactly what it was. Time for the execution. I looked around the operations center one last time. The flickering monitors casting their green glow, Kevin wiping mustard off his shirt, the constant hum of servers that had become the soundtrack to my working life. I genuinely loved this chaos, loved being the guy who kept it all together when everything wanted to fall apart. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out my personal flash drive, completely empty and wiped clean. Grabbed the framed photo of me and my son at his high school graduation, both of us grinning like idiots. Slipped them into my bag along with my emergency stash of headache medicine, which I had a feeling I wouldn't need much longer. "Kevin," I called out, standing up from my chair for what I knew would be the last time. "Yeah, boss. If the routing server asks for level 5 authentication tonight, don't force it. Just let it cycle through on its own." Kevin looked up from his screen, confused. "You going somewhere?" "Just a meeting," I said, slinging my bag over my shoulder. "Hold down the fort." "Always do, Mac." The elevator ride up to HR felt like ascending to my own execution. The HR office smelled like fear, cheap sanitizer, and the dreams of middle management. It was a beige room designed to suck the soul out of you before they even handed you the paperwork. Christopher sat behind the desk like he was judging a talent competition. Ashley was positioned next to him, practicing her "this hurts me more than it hurts you" face. In the corner, Jessica from HR looked like she wanted to be literally anywhere else on Earth, probably including the surface of Mars. "Have a seat, Mac," Christopher said, gesturing to a chair that was obviously positioned lower than theirs. Classic power play from the corporate playbook. "I prefer to stand, Christopher," I said, crossing my arms. "My back acts up when I sit too close to incompetence." His jaw tightened like someone had just yanked his strings. "Let's make this quick then. We've been reviewing operational efficiency metrics, and frankly, we're concerned about the direction. And?" I checked my watch. 2:32 p.m. Right on schedule. Ashley leaned forward with fake concern dripping from her voice like syrup. "We feel that your traditional approach isn't aligning with our agile, forward-thinking vision for the company. We need fresh energy, innovative perspectives, someone who can really embrace the digital transformation we're implementing." "Fresh energy," I repeated slowly. "Is that MBA speak for firing the only guy who knows how to keep your planes from falling out of the sky?" "See?" Ashley pointed at me like I'd just proven her point. "That negativity right there. It's toxic, Mac. We're trying to build a collaborative family environment here, and frankly, your attitude is poisoning the well. I am building a family. I've got a son whose college tuition depends on this job. But please don't let that stop you. Fire me. Say the words instead of hiding behind buzzwords and corporate therapy speak." Christopher stood up, his face turning red. "Fine. You are terminated effective immediately for insubordination and failure to adapt to evolving company protocols." There it was, the magic words that would bring their whole world crashing down. Jessica from HR slid a folder across the desk like she was passing me a death sentence. "We've prepared a severance package. 2 weeks' pay, standard NDA. If you sign now, we won't contest unemployment benefits. 2 weeks. 13 years of keeping their planes in the sky. 13 years of Christmas mornings spent in the operations center instead of with my son. 13 years of turning their disasters into victories. And they offered me 2 weeks. It was insulting. It was also perfect. I didn't even look at the folder. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my ID badge. The plastic was cracked from years of use, the lanyard frayed and stained with coffee. It had my picture from a decade ago. Younger face, more hope in the eyes, back when I thought loyalty meant something in corporate America. I tossed the badge onto Christopher's desk where it landed with a plastic click right on top of Ashley's precious tablet. "Keep the money," I said. "I don't want your severance. And I'm definitely not signing your gag order, because if I sign that, I can't work as a consultant. And trust me, you're going to need a consultant very, very soon." Christopher laughed, the kind of laugh rich kids make when they think they've won something. "You think we can't run this place without you? We have all the data. We have the system documentation. We have the dashboard." I looked deep into his empty trust fund eyes. "Christopher, you have a dashboard that displays data I collect and organize. You have a system that runs on logic I wrote. You think you bought yourself a Tesla with autopilot. You didn't. You bought a stick shift and just fired the only guy who knows how to work a clutch." I headed for the door, but turned back one last time. "Oh, and Christopher, "What?" he snarled. "The server does a cache refresh every 4 hours. It's due to refresh at 3:15. That's in 43 minutes. When the cache clears, it looks for active user authorization to rebuild the connection to the mainframe. If it doesn't find one, well, it gets a little confused. We have authorization." Christopher scoffed. "Tell your dad I said good luck with that." I walked out of that building like a man walking away from an explosion in an action movie, except the explosion was going to happen in about 40 minutes and it was going to cost them everything. The elevator doors closed, and I pulled out my phone, opened the admin app that connected to my personal access portal. Status connected. User Rodriguez. Action. Log out. A warning prompt popped up. Logging out will terminate all active session scripts. Continue. My thumb hovered over the screen. I thought about my son's tuition. I thought about 13 years of loyalty repaid with 2 weeks severance. I thought about Ashley's toxic positivity and Christopher's unearned arrogance. I pressed yes. Status disconnected. I walked out into the Colorado sunshine. The air smelled like jet fuel, mountain air, and freedom. There's a bar called The Runway about a mile from the airport where aviation people go to decompress. I walked in at 2:55 p.m., ordered something that burned going down, and opened FlightAware on my phone to watch the show. 3:10 p.m. Everything looked normal, little yellow plane icons moving across the screen like everything was fine. 3:15 p.m. Cache refresh time. Somewhere in that server room, lines of code were reaching out for my digital handshake and finding nothing but empty air. 3:22 p.m. First casualty. Flight 204 to Salt Lake suddenly showed departure time. Null. I could picture Kevin staring at his screen, confused. "Hey, Brian, Salt Lake flight just lost its routing data." "Probably just a glitch," Brian would say, the new kid who thought he understood systems. Hit refresh. Kevin would refresh. The system would look for my backup script to reload the data. Access denied. 3:30 p.m. Flight 89 to Seattle, delayed. Flight 156 to Phoenix, delayed. The dominoes were falling. My phone started buzzing. Christopher, Ashley, numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them all and ordered another drink. By 4 p.m., Skylink wasn't just delaying flights, it was completely paralyzed. The FAA doesn't mess around with airlines that can't track their own aircraft. When you lose control of your ground operations, they issue what's called a ground stop. Nothing moves. Planes in the air get diverted to other airports. Planes on the ground become very expensive paperweights. For an airline, a ground stop costs about $30,000 a minute. Do the math. The news picked up the story by 5 p.m. Technical difficulties ground Skylink Airways. Video of angry passengers crying babies, businessmen yelling at gate agents who make $16 an hour and definitely don't get paid enough to deal with this level of chaos. Around 6 p.m., my phone rang with a number I recognized. William Thompson Sr., the founder. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Mac. "Mr. Thompson, it's a complete disaster down here. Christopher says you sabotaged our systems. I didn't sabotage anything, sir. I was terminated. The system did exactly what it was programmed to do, protect itself from unauthorized access." Long pause. I could hear shouting in the background. "Come back tonight. I'll fire Christopher. Fire the girl. Name your price. Just get these planes moving." This was my moment. The victory lap. I could walk back in there, save the day, be the hero. Get Christopher's job, a massive raise, maybe even a corner office. But then I thought about the disrespect, the assumption that 13 years of expertise could be replaced by someone's unqualified girlfriend. If I went back, nothing would really change. Christopher would inherit the company eventually, and I'd just be postponing the inevitable. Can't do that, sir. If I come back now and fix this, I'm admitting I broke it. Legal liability and all that. Mac, please. I'm losing $8 million a day. Should have thought about that before you let them replace your head mechanic with a lifestyle blogger. I hung up. The next morning, I updated my LinkedIn, available for immediate consultation. Mountain weather routing, high-altitude operations, legacy system integration. Within an hour, Mark Rodriguez from Rocky Mountain Air called, our biggest competitor. 2 hours later, I was signing a contract for 2.5 times my old salary, full benefits, and complete operational autonomy. 6 months later, Skylink was absorbed by United Airlines for spare parts. Christopher ended up managing a car rental franchise in Pueblo. Ashley started a failed podcast about workplace trauma. Me? I bought a boat. named it Access Denied. Sometimes when I'm fishing and watching the planes fly overhead, all on time, all running smooth, I remember something my old Air Force sergeant used to say: competence is expensive, disrespect costs everything. The kid learned that lesson the hard way. I just provided the education. Thanks for listening, gentlemen. Sometimes you've got to show them what happens when you ground the guy who keeps everything flying.